إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. So as we mentioned, this week we are on the chapter regarding the Day of Judgment. And as we mentioned, we are going to go through all of the different things that happen on the Day of Judgment, beginning from death itself, and then everything that happens after that, up until entry into paradise or hell. So the first point of discussion is regarding the belief in the Day of Judgment. You will have noticed that there are many names for the Day of Judgment. There are many different names mentioned in the Quran, mentioned in the Sunnah for the Day of Judgment. Imām al-Qurtubi said or mentioned over 50 names or more for the Day of Judgment. Imām Ibn Kathir rahimahullah ta'ala mentioned over 80 names for the Day of Judgment. In English we say the Day of Judgment, the Day of Resurrection, the hour, the final day. There's lots of different phrases we use, and all of those, they come from the Arabic. There are many different names for the Day of Judgment. Why is that? Why are there so many different names for the Day of Judgment? You have Al-Yawm Al-Akhir, Yawm Al-Qiyamah, Al-Waqi'ah, Al-Haqqah, Al-Rajifah, Al-Qari'ah, Yawm Al-Din. So many different names. Why are there so many names for the Day of Judgment? Anybody? Anybody have any idea? Why are there so many names for the Day of Judgment in the Quran, in the Sunnah? Why?
What's happening that day? Different things.
It's possible that the names, they represent different angles or aspects of what will occur on that day, possibly to some level and some degree, some extent. But generally you can say that the great number of names are to indicate the greatness of that day. And this is something known in the Arabic language. When something has a high level of importance, then in the Arabic language you find that there are many names for that thing. Like lion. In Arabic, what do you call a lion? Namr. Type of lion. Any other names? Asad. Other names? Layth. There are many names for lion, because the lion is considered as the high predator of the jungle, and so there are many names for it. The sword, in Arabic you notice there are many names for the sword as well, because of the value and the status it had. So when something has value and status, and you want to indicate the greatness of it, يعني لعظم شأنه, then you have a great number of names for that thing. And so that's what it is. كثرة الأسماء لعظم شأنه. The great number of names are to highlight and indicate the greatness of that day. And one of the common names for it is, of course, Al-Yawm Al-Akhir. And the reason why it is known as that, as the last day, is because it is the last day. It is the last day, as Shaykh Al-Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala mentioned, سمي باليوم الآخر لتأخره عن الدنيا. وقال العثيمين رحمه الله لأنه لا يوم بعده, that there is no day after that. Because once the day of judgment occurs, the people go through all of the process and end up in paradise or hell. There are no other days that will carry on this earth after that. So it is the last day in that regard. The first thing then to discuss is that when death comes to a person, then it is the angel of death that is appointed to take the soul of that person. And that process of death and the soul being taken from the person, it is all within the Iman in the day of judgment. Because the Iman in the day of judgment covers everything from the moment of death up until paradise or hell. Everything that happens in between, all of that is Iman in the day of judgment, Iman in the last day. And that is, of course, as you know, one of the pillars of Iman. It is one of the pillars of Iman which is obligatory to believe in. A Muslim who does not believe in that, then it is kufr, it is disbelief. You must have Iman in the day of judgment. As Allah said, وَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِاللَّهِ وَمَلَائِكَتِهِ وَكُتُبِهِ وَرُسُلِهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ فَقَدْ ضَلَّ ضَلَالًا بَعِيدًا. That whomsoever disbelieves in Allah and in His angels and in His books and in His messengers and in the day of judgment, then certainly he has gone astray a great amount, into a great misguidance. He has committed kufr, the one who disbelieves in those pillars of Iman. So Iman in the day of judgment, you could think about it as two parts. Iman in the day of judgment, you can split it up into two parts. One part is Iman in the day of judgment, all of the signs of the hour and everything that will happen after the resurrection. All of that is one part of the belief in the day of judgment. But the other part of the belief in the day of judgment is what happens to you when you die in the barzakh. When a person dies, you go to the barzakh and you remain there up until the day of judgment occurs. So the belief in the day of judgment has these two parts. Belief in the life of the barzakh, in the grave and everything that will happen to you after death, and then belief in the actual day of judgment and everything that will happen there. Two parts to the belief in the day of judgment. The first part we're going to discuss is the part about the barzakh, about death or just before death. That's where we're going to start. what happens to a person just before death, known as al-ihtidar. And then about the trial of the grave, the fitnatul qabr, and then about the adhabul qabr wa na'imuh, the punishments of the grave and the blessings of the grave. Al-ihtidar, the first section is known as al-ihtidar, and that is when the angels descend upon a person to take his soul. That is known as the time of al-ihtidar, when the angels descend upon a person to take his soul. So when the angels descend upon that person to take his soul and they remove his soul, then we say the person has died. The angels take his soul, the person has died. And what is the definition of death? How do we Islamically define what death is? Islamically, we can define death as mufaraqatul ruh lil jasad, the separation of the soul from the body. You have a soul in your bodies. We do not know what that soul is, how it looks like. We don't know. But we all have a soul. When you go to sleep, your soul exits from your body. And that's why sleeping is known as the minor death. When you sleep, it's known as the minor death, because your soul leaves your body when you sleep. And for some people, Allah decrees that their soul does not come back to them in the morning, which means they have died in their sleep, because it was decreed that their soul does not come back. And others, Allah decrees for their soul to go back, and they wake up and they are still alive. So that is the minor death when you're sleeping, because the soul leaves the body, but then it comes back, except for those who die in their sleep. But the major death, which is what we're talking about here, is when the soul leaves the body once and for all in regards to this world. In regards to this world. Meaning in this world, the soul is not going to come back to you. You have now died from this world. The soul exits and it's not coming back to you in this world. It will come back to you in the barzakh. When you die and you're buried in your grave, the soul comes back. And when you're resurrected, the soul is there. But in this world now, when the soul is taken from you and you die, the soul is not coming back to you in this world now. Your body just becomes a corpse. Your body just becomes a corpse in this world now, when the soul is taken from it. What about the soul itself? Does the soul die? When we talk about death, we are saying it is the separation of the soul from the body. So your body is dead. You are a corpse. They will wash you and bury you. You cannot move or speak, dead. What about your soul? Does the soul die at the time of death or not? No. Anybody else? Does the soul die or not? The soul does not die. The soul does not die. And that is because the soul, it simply moves from one state to another. Because remember, there are three places altogether. There are three places we all go to altogether. The first place is this world. We are all here. The first place all of us are in is this world. That is our first residence. هناك ثلاثة دور. الدار الأولى, the first one is this world. والثانية, the second place we all go to is known as we said it once or twice already, the barzakh. That is the second place we all go to. And the third place is the afterlife, the resurrection, paradise, hell. Three places altogether. All of us, we pass through them. This world, then the barzakh, then the afterlife, resurrection, paradise, hell. From those three places, the first one, this world, is our opportunity to do our good deeds. And the soul is with us in our bodies in this world. Then when we die, meaning when the soul leaves our body and our body becomes a corpse and we are dead, then after that we are buried and now we are in the life of the barzakh. There the soul reconnects with the body. There is some reconnection between the soul and the body in the barzakh. And then afterlife, again, the soul has a connection with the body in the afterlife. So the soul doesn't die. The soul simply moves on from this world to the barzakh and then from there to the afterlife. But your body in this world now, you die. And then you are buried and you go to the barzakh. And even if you are not buried, you are still, after you die, in the barzakh. Don't think that the barzakh is only if you are buried. Everybody is in the barzakh after they die, whether they were buried or not. Some people, they are never buried. Some people, their bodies are never found. Some people are maybe eaten by wild animals, nothing left of their body. Some people are burnt in a fire, nothing left of their body. Nothing to bury. But that does not mean they do not go to barzakh. Everyone passes through the barzakh after death, whether you are buried or not. So the soul does not die. The soul simply moves from one place to the next. The soul is with you now, and then it leaves your body, you die. Then in the barzakh, it is there, and in the afterlife, the soul is there. How does the soul exit from your body at the time of death? There is a hadith, or there are some narrations about that. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned regarding how the soul exits, how the soul leaves the body. تَسِيلُ كَمَا تَسِيلُ الْقَطِرَةِ مِنَ السِّقَاءِ. In one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that the soul of a believer at the time of death exits from his body. It flows out like a liquid flows out of a container. If you have a cup or a bottle and you tip it over, all of the liquid just flows out easily or with difficulty. Easily. You pour the cup and the water flows out with ease. Turn the bottle over, the water flows out with ease. There is no difficulty there, with ease. The Messenger said that's how the believer is. The believer, his soul comes out of his body with ease, as the water flows out of the cup or the vessel with ease. That does not mean, though, that there is no difficulty at the time of death. There is difficulty at the time of death. and it is experienced at the time of death. ولا يمنع هذا أن يشعر المؤمن بسكرات الموت وهذا قبل خروج الروح. That before that soul exits, then there is nothing preventing the fact that you will experience those difficulties of death just prior to the death occurring. And that is mentioned in the Quran. وَجَاءَتْ سَكْرَةُ الْمَوْتِ بِالْحَقِّ ذَلِكَ مَا كُنْتَ مِنْهُ تَحِيدٌ. That the stupor of death, it comes with truth in reality, and that is what you were trying to avoid. Everybody trying to avoid that, but that reality and hardship of death, it comes upon a person. وكان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في مرض الوفاة يقول لا إله إلا الله إن للموت لسكرات. And the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, when he was dying, when he was in his final illness, it's mentioned he was saying لا إله إلا الله. Indeed, death has its difficulties. The sakarat, those hardships and that pain. Indeed, death has that pain and those difficulties. The Messenger was saying at the time of his death or just before his death in his final illness. It's mentioned when he was in his final illness, he had a cloth and he was putting it on his head and removing it and putting it on his head moments or prior to his death. So no doubt there is something of difficulty that a person may experience just prior to death. And it's mentioned in another hadith, الْمُؤْمِنُ يَمُوتُ بِعَرَقِ الْجَبِينِ. That a believer dies with sweat upon him, upon his forehead. Meaning, when you get sweat on you, it means that you're doing something that's taking up some effort. And death is not easy, that you die with sweat upon your forehead. Hadith mentions, indicating that you die with some difficulty and you experience that difficulty at the time of death. So even though for the believer the soul will exit with ease and it is taken out with ease like water flows out of a cup, that does not mean that you won't experience, that a believer does not experience some of the difficulty and pain of death. What about the disbelievers? How are their souls removed from their bodies at the time of death? Completely different to the believers. It mentions in a hadith, it mentions أما روح الكافر فتخرج بشدة وصعوبة كما قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. The soul of the disbelievers exits with difficulty, with great hardship. Not like the believers where their soul exits like the water flows out. For the disbelievers, فَيَنْتَزِعُهَا كَمَا يَنْتَزِعُ السَّفُودُ مِنَ الصُّوفِ الْمَبْلُولِ. This example is given in the hadith in the Musnad of Imām Ahmad, that the soul of a disbeliever is ripped out of him, just like a hook or a thorns on the plants, if they were ripped out of a cotton ball of wool. You know, the wool, if you have a cotton wool, a bowl of wool, but it's wet, pour water on it, a bowl of wool with water, then put that thorn, like from the rose, stick it right in there with the thorns on it, a bowl of wool that's wet. Now try to pull it out. What will happen to that bowl of wool as you pull it out? You're going to make it tear everywhere. It's going to tear and rip everywhere as you bring that thorn that's stuck into the wool. It's stuck in there, so when you're pulling it, it's ripping everything as you pull it out. That's the example given. of the soul of a disbeliever being taken from his body. وتزيد هذه الرواية إيضاحا الرواية الأخرى فتفرغ في جسده فينقطع معها العروق والعصب كما يستخرج الصوف المبلول بالصفود ذي الشعب. In this other narration, it mentions again about ripping out something from the wool, but it mentions on top of that, your veins and arteries are ripped. The veins and arteries are ripped as that soul is ripped out of the body of that disbeliever. That is the difference between how the soul of a believer flows out and the soul of a disbeliever is ripped out. That is the difference between the believers and the disbelievers in the way that the soul is taken out. As for the soul itself, like we said, we do not know what the soul looks like, how it is, but we know that it is an entity by itself. It is an entity, some type of entity, يعني عين قائمة بنفسها, some type of entity that is within you, that exists, that soul. So now then, the angels, they come and they remove the soul from a person, and death occurs to that individual. Now that person has moved on from the life of this world into the life of the barzakh. He's moved on into the life of the barzakh now. And one of the things that happens in the barzakh is known as fitnatul qabr, the trial of the grave. The trial of the grave. وهي سؤال الميت في قبره عن ربه ودينه ونبيه. And that is when the deceased individual will be questioned. He will be asked the three questions and maybe more. Who is your Lord? What is your religion? And who is your prophet? Those are the three questions. In the famous book, Thalathatul Usul, that is what the book is about. Those three questions. Who is your Lord? What is your religion? And who is your prophet? Those are the three questions that you will be asked in the grave. And that is why it is so important for every individual to learn the answers, to understand what or who your Lord is, who Allah is, to know that in detail, to know what your religion is, all the pillars of Islam and the evidences and the Sunnah and the Quran, to know what or who your prophet is, who was the messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when was he born, when did he die, what was his tribe. To have knowledge of these things, that is what you will be asked in your graves. Who is your Lord? What is your religion? And who is your prophet? And this occurs, that questioning occurs as soon as the person passes on from this world to the next, into the barzakh. And typically that is when the person is put into his grave. Because it mentions in a hadith about how the messenger said that he is now being questioned. وَهُوَ الْآنْ يُسْأَلْ, in the grave. But like we said, even if you are not buried, this will still happen. The questions will still be asked. What is the evidence that this happens? There are many evidences that this happens, that you are asked those questions after you die. One of them is in Surah Ibrahim, ayah number 27. يثبت الله الذين آمنوا بالقول الثابت في الحياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة. It mentions in this ayah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make the people of Iman upright upon the correct statement, will make them firm upon the upright and correct statement in this world and in the afterlife. فسرها النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بفتنة القبر. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم explained this ayah when Allah said He will make you strong upon the correct statement in this world and in the afterlife. The Messenger said that is talking about when you are asked the questions. When the fitnatul qabr happens, when the trial of the grave happens and you are being asked, Allah will make you firm to be able to give the correct answers. And that is mentioned in Al-Bukhari, in the hadith of Al-Bara ibn Azib, أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إذا أعيد المؤمن في قبره أتى ثم شهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمد رسول الله فذلك قوله يثبت الله الذين آمنوا بالقول الثابت. وقال حدثنا محمد بن بشار قال حدثنا غندر قال حدثنا شعبة بهذا وزاد يثبت الله الذين آمنوا نزلت في عذاب القبر. So there are these narrations from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and from that other version as well, telling you that this ayah is talking about the trial of the grave. That Allah will make the believers to be able to say the correct and upright answers in this life and in the afterlife. In this life, so that you are upon the truth, and in the afterlife, when the trial of the grave happens, when the angels are asking you. And in fact, there are approximately 26 companions, not just 1 or 2 or 5 or 10, 26 companions who narrated these narrations about the trial of the grave. 26 companions. So it is mutawatir, as Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned. Another evidence, that was the first, proving the trial of the grave. Another evidence proving the trial of the grave is the hadith in Al-Bukhari and Muslim, when a man came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Oh, naam, before that one, another hadith where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, إنه قد أوحي إلي أنكم تفتنون في القبور مثل أو قريبا من فتنة المسيح الدجال. إنه قد أوحي إلي أنكم تفتنون في القبور مثل أو قريبا من فتنة المسيح الدجال. That it has been revealed to me, the Messenger said, it has been revealed to me that you are going to be tested in your graves with a test that is similar or close to the test of the Dajjal itself. So it's a severe test, a severe trial that the Messenger said, it has been revealed to me you are going to get in the grave. And there are other hadith and other narrations also that prove and show that this trial of the grave, it occurs, and that the angels, they come and they question the person. A few topics to discuss regarding this trial of the grave, regarding this questioning that happens. Firstly, does that happen for everybody that ever existed? Or is that something that only happens to this ummah, to the ummah of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam? Is it everybody throughout from the beginning, or is it only for this ummah, this particular ruling? هل فتنة القبر للأمم كلها أم لهذه الأمة فقط? Is the trial of the grave for all of the nations, or is it only for this particular nation of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? الجواب هي للأمم كلها. What is correct there is that the trial of the grave occurs for all nations, for everybody. The nation of Ibrahim alayhi salam, the nation of Musa alayhi salam, the nation of Isa alayhi salam, Nuh alayhi salam, all of the nations, all of the people, they have this trial of the grave after death. But there are some people who are excluded. Some people are exempt. Some people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows them to be missed. Who are those people? Huh? Martyrs? Martyrs. Who else? Prophets and messengers. Who else? Children maybe. So we'll have a look now. The first and obvious category of people who are exempt from this trial of the grave are the prophets and messengers. And that is for two reasons. One, because what is one of the three questions? Who is your Lord? What is your religion? And who is your prophet? Exactly. So, can you ask the prophet, who is your prophet? He is the prophet. So the scholar said it wouldn't make sense to do the trial of the grave on the prophet. The prophet is the one that Allah chose. The prophet is the one that Allah gave the revelation to. He is the prophet himself. So it would not be correct, or it would not make sense that the prophets themselves also get the trial of the grave. So they are exempt. And the other reason why they are exempt is, as the brother mentioned, we're going to come to it in a minute, the martyrs are exempt. And who is better, prophets or martyrs? Prophets? So if the martyrs are exempt, then obviously the prophets must be exempt, because the prophets are higher than the martyrs. So the prophets and messengers, they are excused and exempt from the trial of the grave. The second category then who are exempt is the martyrs, الشهداء. And the evidence for that in a hadith in Sunan an-Nasa'i, a man came to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. قال يا رسول الله ما بال المؤمنين يفتنون في قبورهم إلا الشهيد. A man came to the messenger and said, O messenger of Allah, how come everybody is going to be tested in their graves apart from the martyrs? Why are they exempt? How come they are exempt? How is it that everybody is going to be tested in their graves except for the martyrs? So the Prophet ﷺ explained to him why. He said, كَفَى ببارقة السيوف على رأسه فتنة. Sufficient was the striking of the swords upon his head as a trial. Those who were martyrs sincerely fought in the path of Allah, and the swords struck them down and they died in the path of Allah. The messenger said that is enough of a test for them. That they died in the path of Allah with the swords striking upon them, that is enough of a test for them. So the martyrs are exempt from this particular trial of the grave. So we have two categories so far. The prophets and messengers are exempt. The martyrs are exempt. The third category who are exempt, من مات مرابطا في سبيل الله. ففي حديث سلمان أنه قال: سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول: رباط يوم وليلة خير من صيام شهر وقيامه، وإن مات جرى عليه عمله الذي كان يعمله وأجري عليه رزقه وأمن الفتان. The murabit is the person who stands and watches and guards at the boundaries of the land. Because when the enemy comes and they attack, who's the first person who's going to be attacked? The one who is standing at the gates looking out. If you have your city, for example, and you have people positioned on the gates and the walls of the city, on the outsides, looking out any enemy coming. If the enemy does come and they start shooting and attacking, who's the first person to be attacked? Those people who are stood on the boundaries, keeping an eye out and watching and helping to protect all of the land. So that is a very dangerous job, and it is in the path of Allah that a person does that. And so it's mentioned in this hadith, somebody who does that, they are also exempt from the trial of the grave. They are also exempt, and it mentions in this hadith, the one who does that a day and a night, then it is better than fasting a month and praying a month. And at the end of it, it mentions وَأُمِنَ الْفَتَّانِ, and that person will be kept safe from those angels who come to do the test in the grave. So that's the third category of people. The fourth category of people who are exempt, من مات يوم الجمعة أو ليلتها. Somebody who dies on a Friday or Friday night. And what we mean by Friday night is in English Thursday night. So Thursday night in English, how we say Thursday night, and then Friday. Because in Islam, Islamically speaking, the night comes first, then the day comes. In English now, the way they do it, the day comes first, Sunday right now, then tonight it's going to be Sunday night. But Islamically, tonight is going to be Monday night, because the night comes first, then the day after it. So the one who dies, in English, how we say Thursday night and then Friday. Islamically, that's Friday night and Friday. And that is mentioned in a hadith, ما من مسلم يموت يوم الجمعة أو ليلة الجمعة إلا وقاه الله فتنة القبر. That there is not a person who dies on a Friday or the night of a Friday except that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects him from the trial of the grave. And that is mentioned in Sunan at-Tirmidhi and the likes of Shaykh al-Albani have declared it to be an authentic narration. And there is some difference of opinion about that narration. Some scholars, they say no, that doesn't count, because they say the hadith is weak. But other scholars, they say no, the hadith is okay. And so if the hadith is okay, that means whoever dies on a Friday or the night of Friday is exempt from the trial of the grave too. The fifth category of people who are exempt, من لا تكليف عليه. Those people who are exempt from the Sharia, from the legislation upon them in the first place. And they are like the infants, children, or people who have mental illnesses and they don't understand or recognize anything. Those types of people, كالصغير والمجنون فإنهما لا فتنة عليهما على الصحيح. The one who is mentally incapable, doesn't understand, then Islamically he can't do worship. And the child who is young yet, they are excused from the trial of the grave, according to the correct opinion. Because there is another opinion of some of the scholars who say they are not exempt. There is an opinion of some scholars. They mention that the child is not exempt. And that is mentioned in some of their books and their explanations. But what appears to be correct is that the child and the one mentally incapable, so he cannot implement the religion, then they are exempt from the trial of the grave. So how many categories there who are exempt from the trial of the grave? 5 categories. The next question is, what about, so we've said all of the nations, past and present, up to the nation of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, all of them get the test, except these 5 categories of people. We haven't spoken about the kuffar. The kuffar, do they get tested or not? Or is this test about the Muslims? The kuffar, they get this test as well? Or is this just about the Muslims? هل الكافر يفتن في قبره؟ اختلف في الكافر فذهب الجمهور إلى أنه يفتن. There is some difference of opinion about the kuffar, about the disbelievers. The majority of the scholars, they say the disbelievers will be tested also. وذهب بعض أهل العلم منهم ابن عبد البر والسيوطي إلى أن الكافر الظاهر لا يفتن بخلاف المنافق. Some scholars like Ibn Abd al-Barr and al-Suyuti, they took the opinion that a kafir who is an open kafir, clear kafir, they are not tested because they are clear kafir. So what is the point of asking them who is your Lord and what is your religion, who is your prophet? They are kuffar and they openly declared themselves as kuffar. So no purpose to their test. But the munafiqun, they said, will get tested. That is the opinion of some scholars. That the clear kuffar who declared themselves as kuffar in this world and died upon that, they are not tested. They are upon kufr, finished. But the munafiqun are tested because the munafiqun were pretending to be Muslims. So they will be tested in their graves. Who is your Lord? And what is your religion and who is your prophet? Because they will not be able to lie then. They will not be able to give a lie as their answer in the barzakh. In this world they could do it, but in the barzakh they will not. So that is what some scholars believe, that the open kuffar, they don't get it, but the munafiqun kuffar, they get it. And they have some evidences for that, some narrations that could possibly indicate that. But the correct opinion is the opinion of the majority of the scholars, which is that all of the kuffar are given this trial in the grave also. Another thing to mention is, who gives you that trial in the grave? Who comes and asks you those questions? Who? Al-Munkar wa Nakir. And who are they? 2 angels. The 2 angels, Al-Munkar and Nakir, they are the 2 angels that are given the responsibility of coming to your grave or to the person in the barzakh to do that trial upon every person. Al-Munkar wa Nakir. It's mentioned in a hadith. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا قبر الميت أو قال أحدكم أتاه ملكان أسودان أزرقان يقال لأحدهما المنكر وللآخر النكير. That when the dead person is put into his grave, or when one of you is put into your grave, 2 angels that are black and blue in their appearance, they will come to you. One of them is known as Al-Munkar and the other one is known as An-Nakir. So the hadith, it tells us, hadith in Tirmidhi, Hasan, it tells us the description of the angels, al-munkar wa nakir, that they will be, the hadith says, black and blue. It doesn't tell us any more. So some scholars said, they made ijtihad, they said maybe when the hadith says they will be black and blue, that's all it says, they said maybe that means that their bodies will be completely black, a black figure, and their eyes will be bright blue. Maybe that's what it could be, some scholars said. We don't know that for sure, because the hadith doesn't say that for sure. It just says black and blue. But some scholars said maybe from their ijtihad, that's what it could be, maybe. That they are completely black in their appearance, completely black and dark, and you cannot see anything, and their eyes are bright blue, and then they come and test you. Maybe that could be the meaning, but it's not definite. That is not what the hadith says. The hadith just says black and blue. But that is an interpretation of some of the scholars. The final thing to note here regarding the trial of the grave and the barzakh so far was what we were talking about regarding the soul. So we said in the barzakh, the soul reconnects or comes back to the body. Overall, Ibn al-Qayyim said there are 5 connections between the body, your body and your soul. There are 5 connections in total between your body and your soul. Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned this in Kitab al-Ruh. The first connection that your soul has to your body, when is the first connection ever? So when you are still fi batni ummik, when you're still unborn in the womb of your mother, because when the mother is pregnant and the child is in her womb, after 4 months, what happens? فَيُرْسَلُ إِلَيْهِ مَلَكٌ فَيَنْفُخُ فِيهِ الرُّوحِ. The angel is sent to that child in the womb of its mother, and the angel blows in the soul. So that is the first connection now that happens between your soul and your body. You're not even born yet. In the womb of your mother, the soul is blown in to that child at 4 months. That's why the scholars say, if a child dies before 4 months of pregnancy, then there was no soul in that baby yet, which means you don't have to do a janazah. If a baby dies before 4 months of pregnancy, the soul wasn't blown in yet, so you don't have to do a janazah or anything. But if the baby dies after that, 5 months of pregnancy, 6 months of pregnancy, something happens, miscarriage, and the baby dies, now the soul had been blown into that child. So now you can do the aqiqah, and you can even name that baby and do the janazah, everything, because now the soul had been blown into that child. So that is the first connection in the womb of the mother when the soul is blown in. The second connection is, as we said, in this world. The soul is in your body now as you live in this world. The third connection is when you sleep, because when you sleep, there is a connection and there is a disconnection, because the soul temporarily leaves your body and then comes back. So there's a temporary disconnect and a connect when you're sleeping. The fourth connection of the soul is then with you in the barzakh, and the fifth connection, the eternal connection, is then after the resurrection. When the resurrection happens, you are now out of the barzakh. When the resurrection happens, and that's when the soul then is with you and remains with you. That is the opening section regarding the belief in the Day of Judgment. That is the opening section. This is the exact curriculum that we did at the University of Medina. In University of Medina, when you do the degree there and you do this section about the belief in the Day of Judgment, this is what they teach. This is the exact curriculum. You can see it's 20 years old, my book. From those days, 2006-07. This is what they teach. So this is the curriculum we're going to go through section by section. That is the first section. Next week, inshaAllah ta'ala, we'll move on to the second section, which is the second thing to talk about in the barzakh. There is the trial of the grave we've now spoken about. The second thing is what happens in the barzakh. Either you are going to be in bliss, blessings, or you will be in hardship and punishment of the grave. There is the blessings of the grave, the na'im al-qabr, and there is the punishment of the grave, adhab al-qabr. And we'll talk about the narrations regarding that, because in some hadith it mentions the messenger said, if you could hear the screams of the people being punished in their graves, you wouldn't even go to the graves to bury anyone. You'd be so scared to go from the screams that you hear. In fact, in one hadith it says, you yourself would end up dying if you heard those screams of the people being punished in their graves. So that is the topic we'll begin with from next week, inshaAllah ta'ala. That is the opening section concluded for today. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad.